Now, the Conservative MP and member of the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, Sir Robert Buckland, is here with us this morning. Hey, how are you? It's nice to see you, as always. Is this deal going to go ahead?
Well, it sounds like it. I mean, I'm hearing...
You've been here before.
Well, we have many times, and I think a lot of us have got the scars on our back on Brexit. It does sound as if it is happening. If Ursula von der Leyen is coming over this afternoon, then it does look like that the British government and the EU have agreed a deal, which I think is really positive news for the people of Northern Ireland, because anything that helps to deal with the bureaucracy and the disruption that is caused to businesses by these checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I think, is a very positive step forward.
It's not a deal unless the DUP agree, though, is it?
Well, I very much hope that the DUP will approve what comes out of the package. I'm hearing that there are potential developments on VAT and state subsidies, which are big issues as well for the relationship between the EU and the UK. But I think now is the time for us to press ahead with much-needed change. I think that we need to think about citizens in Northern Ireland and their lives and the reality of life on the ground in Northern Ireland and work together for that change. And whilst it'd be great to have the DUP on board, I think now is the time for us to get on with those reforms.
From what you're saying, can we glean that the DUP is not all-powerful like it was previously?
Well, look, I'm sure that DUP MPs and MLAs themselves would not claim to be all-powerful. I think what they would say is that they are...
Managed to scupper deals before.
Well, I mean, look, we remember when, of course, they held the balance of power in that hung parliament back in 17. That isn't the case anymore. But it's not the case that they are being marginalised. And also there's a wider issue here about unionist opinion within Northern Ireland. There are many strands of opinion that support union with Great Britain, with the UK, but who might take a more pragmatic view, shall we say, of the need for some compromise here. You know, we mustn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I'm sure that this deal will probably have some unanswered questions and maybe not solve all the issues in one fell swoop. But it does sound as if it's going to be a big step forward. That means then we don't have to take this unilateral action here in the UK with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill that's currently before Parliament.
It sounds as though the Prime Minister's already got the top off his Mont Blanc fountain pen, but surely it needs to go to a vote in the House of Commons.
Well, here's the thing. I think technically it probably doesn't, because I think this is...
That's not really the point, though, is it?
Well, I understand politics, Kay. I've been around a long time. I think if I were the government, I'd probably be making time for a debate and for some sort of vote that can be held by members. But I do think that as a matter of law, it is important to remember that we put into place mechanisms in the EU Withdrawal Act back in 2020 that allow for these things to have direct effect through that already established legislative pipeline. So let's not get too hung up about this. But the idea that somehow MPs aren't going to have their say is, I think, for the birds. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of opinion in the next few days.
So you think there will be a vote?
Well, I think there'll be some sort of vote. I think...
Because the ERG will want to vote. People like Boris Johnson and Suella Braverman, who are agitating in the background, they will all want to vote. Yeah,
but the government is right to say that they've already established the statutory pipeline through which any treaties are enforced.
That's true, but what does that mean for the Prime Minister in
look,
real terms?
I think it means for the Prime Minister he's able to do his deal and actually act in the interest of the people of Northern Ireland. And I think that whilst Parliament is obviously hugely important in all of that, I think that ultimately, you know, the government has got to be in a position where it is able to make these international agreements and then make them stick. And I'm sure that the majority of the Conservative Party will want the Prime Minister to succeed.
I understand that, but the Prime Minister has to keep the troublemakers on side.
Well, yes, he does, but also this is about leadership. And I think when you are in these positions of leadership, taking some risks, taking difficult decisions, grasping nettles, if you like, is a really important part of what it is to be a leader. And I think the Prime Minister is demonstrating that at the moment. I very much hope that he succeeds. It will be a demonstration of his resolution and his ability to, under big pressure, make those big calls.
But you can only lead if you have the support of your backbenchers.
Well, I think the majority of backbenchers will rally round. I think that whilst it's important to hear the voices of everybody who, like me, has been deep in the weeds on all of this, I think ultimately, looking at the bigger picture, we've got to put ourselves in the shoes of the people of Northern Ireland. Remember that it is their interest that we need to serve, the interests of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, to make sure that that peace process isn't undermined by any damage to the north-south border. But at the same time, no damage to the east-west border, which is, of course, an important strand of that 1998 agreement.
OK, here come all the acronyms. The DUP saying 7 tests, including no border in the Irish Sea, no checks on goods between GB and I. And if they don't support what's going forward, then the ERG, another European Research Group, another acronym for you, they are not going to support it because they want the DUP to be happy. So where does that leave the Prime Minister?
Well, I think the 7 tests having been developed last year were an important moment for the DUP. I've yet to see, and I think all of us have yet to see the detail of that deal. It may well be the DUP keep their counsel.
It's border down the Irish Sea of some form, isn't
Well,
it?
I think it'll be a vast improvement on where we were if we have red and green lanes. I think the problem here, Kay, is that we have a unique situation in Northern Ireland. We have a peace process we've got to maintain. That north-south border must never be a hard border. And that does mean that the rules of the single market do start to blend in a rather unusual and perhaps inelegant way with the rules and the laws of the United Kingdom. There therefore needs to be a compromise. I think within those 7 tests, the DUP, I think, do understand that this is a unique position. And, we've now, in early 2023, we've moved on. I think the position that meant that the government was right back in June last year to bring forward its own unilateral legislation here in Parliament has changed. The fact we're having meaningful negotiations, the fact the EU themselves acknowledge problems with the protocol, I think was a big step forward. And that does mean that we're now in a place where we can normalise relations, which will have wider implications for the UK. We can start to do business on small boats, for example, if we can get this deal over the line.
What happened to it being an oven-ready deal and no border whatsoever in the Irish Sea? That's what a previous Conservative Prime Minister promised us.
Well, I would say that in the main, we got the absolute deal that we wanted. I think the protocol was always going to be a problem. I think that some of the practical effects of the protocol have now demonstrated real dislocation. Of course, not all of the protocol has even been brought into force yet, and I think that would be an even more problematic situation.
You need to be Einstein to realise it was going to be a problem.
Well, I don't think any of us were denying the fact that this was a complex and unique situation in Northern Ireland. But what I think it is encouraging to see is the government prepared to seize the initiative, get on with those meaningful negotiations, and now, hopefully today, we can see them bearing fruit.
So, how come, potentially, Rishi Sunak can get this over the line and Boris Johnson couldn't?
Well, look,
that was a big sign before you answered this question.
I'm not in the room, Kay. I'm not in the room. I don't have the advantage this time of being in the rooms where decisions are made or information is passed on. What I would say is that I think this Prime Minister has been able to create a relationship of trust. I think
it's about personalities.
Well, sometimes politics is, and this isn't a reflection on previous Prime Ministers particularly. If you get on well with people and win their trust, then I think in all our experiences, more business can be done. And I think the relationship with the French president has probably improved. I think there is that willingness. Why do you think that is? Well, I think I haven't been in a room with either of them together, but I understand that there is a good personal chemistry and that the relationship is a healthy one. That's really important if we are to make progress on things like small boats, Kay. I think it's vital for the interests of the UK at this time of economic pressure that we are able to show the world that we are capable of making deals and agreements like the one I hope will emerge this week. And I think that is good, not just for Northern Ireland, but also good for Britain's reputation in the world, our relationship with the United States, and indeed the wider position of Britain. So that's why I'm willing the Prime Minister on, and I very much hope that a deal can be reached.
So, just to clarify, we've got a Conservative Prime Minister who is finally listening to what the European Union has to say.
Well, I think they're listening to us as well. I think this time last year, the Commission and indeed other governments, the Irish government, weren't really in a position where they were prepared to admit that there was a problem with the protocol. That changed. We heard much more positive noises from the Irish government. And the EU themselves then showed a willingness to share data and to come to the negotiating table for those formal talks. I think both sides have shown a willingness to compromise and to come to a sensible agreement, and that's why I think we should be welcoming the news today.
And just to clarify, why did we sign a deal if we thought that it wasn't the right deal?
Well, if you remember back in 2019, I think we were in a position where we really needed to get a deal over the line. I think that in the main, I think that deal was an extremely sensible one for the United Kingdom. We got Brexit done in early 2020. We created that transition period. We got a trade agreement that indeed in many elements was a deeper trade agreement than perhaps people had originally thought. I'd love to go further. I'd like to see more subjects covered, like financial services, for example, in the future. But I do, remembering our position at the time, I think it was very important that we got a deal with the EU and managed to keep to that timetable, which, bearing in mind the previous frustrations that we'd seen about Brexit, was indeed an achievement of Boris Johnson.
How can you say we got Brexit done when we're where we are today?
Well, I think the very fact of Brexit has been done. But here's the thing, Kay. I think our relationship with the EU will be a continuing negotiation. They're geographically next door to us. We have a lot of trade and relationships in common between them. We will continue to talk bilaterally with the EU. And frankly, that's what I'd want to see. I think the idea that somehow we shut up shop and say, well, thank you very much, we're not going to be talking to you anymore, is, I think, rather a dangerous concept. I want to see more meaningful discussions with the EU in future so that we can enjoy that healthy bilateral relationship outside of the institutions of Brussels.
Robert, it's always great to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kate.
Much appreciated. Thank you.